So it's been a weird day. It's been a weird day for both of us, I think.
Yeah, so when we woke up this morning, we were staying on a kibbutz in northern Israel as part of the birthright trip that we were on. And now we're in a park in Tel Aviv, trying to figure out like where we're gonna stay and what we're gonna do. Because we got kicked off our birthright trip this afternoon.
Yeah, I think like it's, you know, one of the very first things that we saw when we got to Israel is we drove past the border wall between Israel and the West Bank. And like that image has just been like stuck with me the whole trip. Like I do immigrant rights work, like I think about borders and I think about border walls all the time. And I think about like what they do to people, to families and to communities, and what they mean for people who are separated by them. And you know, when we drove past the wall for like the third or fourth time on this trip today, I was like, I have to say something about this. So I raised my hand and stood up on the bus and was just like, did we just drive past the wall between Israel and the West Bank? And our tour guide was like, yeah, thank you so much for asking that question, and like proceeded to go on like a 10-minute like speech rant about like Palestinians and how they're all terrorists and like suicide bombers and like all of this stuff. And it just felt like completely without nuance, like completely without any like humanity for Palestinians.
Yeah, well, it was like that the entire trip. Like the only thing we heard about Arabs and Palestinians is they're crazy, they're violent, and everything's their fault. And it was literally that black and white.
And I just felt like I can't just like sit here and like listen to this rant and like pretend that I'm like okay with it. So I said, like, this feels like a really unnuanced, you know, portrayal of what's happening. And like, are we gonna get any more nuanced perspective here? And basically the answer was like, no, there's like nobody here in like the whole, and like all of Israel Palestine who can like do that.
Yeah, it was like, is there anyone that can give us even like a sense of the Palestinian perspective? And he was like, I don't know of any program or person that could do that. And yeah, just like, it was very clear that like he was very committed to us only getting one viewpoint, and like that's just how birthright is, and you know, you're just supposed to shut up. And
that's like part of the deal, is like you don't ask those questions, you like get your free trip if you like leave your values like at the door and like don't talk about it. And so we got to our next activity in Tel Aviv, and basically a bunch of birthright staff were there, and they said that like we had to leave and that we got kicked off the trip basically for asking questions about like the wall.
Right, we don't know exactly why, because they wouldn't tell us why they kicked us off. They said we broke rules and regulations, and we said, what rules and regulations? Like combined, we asked like 5 questions, and they just refused to say what rule it is that we broke.
So we were like, why? Like, what did we actually do that's like warranting this? And there was like no answer. And at some point, I was like, if you don't give us an answer, like we'll just have to assume it's because of our values. And
I mean, they basically said, like, it seems like you guys want to hear a nuanced and diverse set of perspectives, and that's not what we do here, so it's not the trip for you. Like, the woman pretty much said that.
And so, and the thing that they were, like, really upset about is when we were asking the question, someone was filming, but people have been filming, like, the entire trip, so you're allowed to film, like, anything else on a birthright trip except for when you ask questions about the wall or the occupation, or, like, whether you can hear from, like, any sort of nuanced perspective.
Yeah, and the tour guide was upset about that, and like that's a human reaction that happens, but for that to then mean that we get kicked off the trip because somebody else was videotaping, or you know, which has been happening the entire trip, just didn't make sense.
So yeah, so we asked them like specifically like what is the thing that we did to like get us kicked off this trip, and they like wouldn't pinpoint anything in specific. It was just clear that like if you have values that you want to hear more than one perspective, that's like, then birthright's not the place for you to be. And yeah, I feel pretty rattled by it still, and we're like gonna figure out now like where we're gonna go and what we're gonna do, and like hopefully we'll get to hear like some more varied perspectives than we were able to hear on that trip.